Hello and welcome to the Festival for Change. Today I'm here with Reuben Sekamwa, who is an expert in energy poverty, energy literacy, and is a project manager for the Rise Up movement and founder of 1 Million Activists, which tells activist stories. A quick introduction of myself is I'm Molly. I'm a student at the University of Manchester, studying economics. So yeah, over to you, Davis.
Thank you so much, Molly Chambers. As I've been introduced, I am a climate and energy justice advocate, and I am based in Uganda, Kampala, capital. I'll take you through a brief background of how I started my activism. This was in 2019, after my graduation, and I managed to see a young lady on the streets. Some of you may know her, Vanessa Nakate, holding placards, and it pushed me to get to know more about what she was doing. And over time, I joined climate activism. And the more I studied about it, the more I got to know that the energy sector contributes a big chunk of the greenhouse gases that are emitted in the atmosphere. I'll give you an example. If you look around you right now, the lighting, that is all energy. The heating and the cooling, that is all energy. The transportation system, the food we eat, it all needs energy. Energy sector plays a big part of our daily livelihoods, and energy sector contributes to 70% of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And what that means is that we cannot achieve the climate justice that we want without dealing with the issue of energy justice. I am a project manager at the Rise Up movement, and I work on a particular project. It's called the Vash Green School Project. And in this project, one of our goals is to promote access to renewable energy solutions. So we look at schools that are in remote areas, schools that are in rural communities and are financially incapable of affording electricity. And every time we go to these schools, we make sure that we create awareness about energy and energy use. When we go to these schools, we provide them with solar panels that light up a big chunk of their schools and their buildings. And also, we provide them with eco-friendly institutional stoves. The reason why we provide them with the eco-friendly institutional stoves is because they rely on open fires to cook their food. And open fires, that means there is more firewood that is used to prepare the food. There is more carbon dioxide given off in the atmosphere. And the more carbon dioxide given off in the atmosphere, it creates a heat blanket over the earth. So we make sure that we have as much community engagement in these projects as much as possible. And the reason for this is to increase the level of social acceptance and reduce social resistance, and also to foster behavior change towards energy use. And we make sure that this whole process of promoting solutions is inclusive, especially on the women are left out in energy discussions. So we make sure that the women, who in most times are the end users of such technologies that we bring, for example, the eco-friendly institutional stoves, it's the women that prepare the food at these schools most of the times. So we make sure that they are included in the operations, in the setting up of such technologies and innovations. And I want to tell people out there that there is no single magical solution to climate change. Everyone is able to uh, advocate for climate justice in any area of life that you're working in. anywhere you are located in any country, you can use your voice, you can use what you're good at to advocate for climate justice, because we need each other to achieve justice for the earth. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was amazing. One thing that I was really interested about from that is you talked a little bit about social resistance to renewable energy. Could you explain a little bit more about that? Like how are people, yeah, how are people resistant to it?
Thank you. So when I talk about social resistance, we find that these people are using technologies that they are used to. They have grown up using open fires to prepare food. So that is what they have seen all their livelihoods. Because of their level of income, they cannot afford better technologies. So when you bring an eco-friendly institutional stove, they will feel that it requires more work. It requires the older them, the more they are able to see the other side of the advantages of the new technologies and how they are actually helping them better with their work.
Brilliant. Thank you. So we now have another question from Henry Lusengore. And this is, do the communities you work with already have access to electricity, or is solar energy going to provide the first access to electricity?
Thank you for that question. So the communities we work with, especially the schools, we work with the schools in these rural communities, they have no access to electricity. So that means these schools they use the sun as a source of light. And when it gets dark, that means that they can no longer study for longer hours. So they have no any source of lighting for their education, and that's why we provide them with a solar renewable solutions for their lighting needs.
Brilliant. Okay. And so another question I have is, it would be great if you could go into a little bit more about how we can make um, the process inclusive of access to like solar energy and stuff.
Okay, that's a good point. When we started this project, we noticed that in many spheres, there is no total gender inclusivity, especially on the side of the women. And you find that it's the women who are, for example, the eco-friendly stoves. They use these eco-friendly stoves more because they prepare the food. So we cannot come and construct the eco-friendly institutional stove without engaging with a person who's going to use it, because you need to take into consideration uh, their needs as well. Uh, if I'm to get technical, you may construct the eco-friendly stove when it is too high for the person who is going to be using it, or too low. And if that happens, that means that over time, they will get challenges using it, and they will be forced to revert to their older technologies that they used to use when they are cooking food or anything that they're using. So they have to be incorporated in the planning process. They have to be incorporated in the operation from the day that we start constructing it to the final day. We have to engage with them.
Brilliant, thank you. So we have a kind of similar question here. This is from Nicolette Bota, and that is, what obstacles do you face in including women and other marginalised groups in the management and control of local renewable energy sources?
Thank you. The, the biggest problem that we face is mostly tight regulations, especially because we are working in a country that is setting up the East African crude oil pipeline. So anything that sounds as climate justice is not really welcomed at this point. And when you try to work with schools that are more in the capital, that are lacking either uh, eco-friendly institutional stoves, they have to work with a central government. And when they take it to the central government, it becomes political. And that's why we find it easier to work with schools in rural communities, because in the deep rural communities, we don't work with the central government, we work with the local governments there that welcome the project with open arms. And then maybe the other challenges are uh, we need innovations in financing. And when I say that innovations in financing, I mean we need more public and the private sector to come together to finance such endeavors, especially in promoting renewable energy. Most times, uh, we rely on funds by donors, and at certain times, we have to put the project at a stop until we are able to collect more funds to meet the needs of other schools.
Great, thank you. Do you think there's a better way that it could be financed? So if you could like in an ideal world, if you could choose how it was to be financed, what's the kind of, what's an ideal situation? What's the long-term goal?
Okay, so right now, the way the project is being financed is through donations by different people worldwide. But however, even within our communities, through corporate financing, they can contribute to such such projects, where the different companies and NGOs and even the private sector is incentivized and given incentives in promoting such technologies. The public sector must also support the private sector. And when I talk about the public sector, I refer to the governments, because most cases it's the NGOs that are funding such, and the government does not take a lead in this. But the government is able to, because it has access to larger amounts of funds, and it's in a better position to provide them to different movements that are doing such work.
Thank you. So you've described quite a lot of resistance from kind of from government. Why do you think that is? And do you think there's anything we can do to kind of change that?
I'll give you a scenario that happened when I was at COP26. Uh, there were activists back home here in Uganda that were protesting against the East African crude oil pipeline, and they ended up being arrested. Now, that is a sort of resistance I'm talking about. Now, when they get to know, because they know that we are against the opening up of new coal power plants, and what they're doing right now is going to only increase the amount of greenhouse gases that are given off. So they find it hard to work with us because they know we are not sharing the same ideas. And it's very hard to help out because the laws of the land or the laws here in Uganda may differ from the laws in other countries. And in most cases, that's why you find that certain campaigns, certain environmental campaigns can be done in our country.
That's great, thank you. So we have another question from Nicolette Bota, and this was building on Henry's question earlier. Do the schools gain financially and educationally from the provision of renewable energy?
Schools don't gain financially from the provision of renewable energy. However, they do when you look at it in educational terms. Um, when you look at the teachers, we got trees because no one wants to work in an environment that has no electricity. The previous schools, that the rate of teacher retention increased, and also that the student intake increased as well. And then the other side for the students is that the students are able to study for longer hours when it gets dark, because we have to ensure that the what we call preps in Uganda. And preps, that means that to 9 p.m. So when we provide the renewable energy through solar, they are able to study for those longer hours, and it provides a better education experience for them as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've got another question from Henry Lusingor, which is, how is the provision of solar energy to schools funded? And I think you answered that earlier with you said it was by donors, is that correct? Oh, I think we've lost you.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So another question I have is, how does the kind of process of teaching energy literacy work, and how would you kind of define that? How would you define energy literacy? Oh, I think we've lost you again.
And if I can add on the previous question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we've lost you again.
Uh,
Oh.
Thank you.
I think I can hear your audio now, possibly. Okay, would you like to try turning off your camera, maybe? Okay. Yeah, apologies for this. We're just having some network problems. Okay. We'll just wait for him to come back, hopefully. Okay. Okay, so he's just trying to get back online now. So we'll just hold on. Oh, there we go. Hello?
Hello, sorry about that.
No worries, that's fine. We can hear you and see you now. So I can move on to our next question if you're ready.
Oh, yeah, it was about energy illiteracy.
Yes, yeah. So if you'd like to go back to that one, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I was drawing back from the experiences that we have when you're working with these schools. Every time we finish an installation in a school, we make sure that we talk to the teachers and the students. And through us engaging with them, we are able to talk to them why we are doing what we are doing. Why are we promoting renewable solutions? Why are we giving them the solar? Why are we providing them with the eco-friendly institutional stoves? And we tell them and we educate them in the simplest ways how the energy sector is contributing two-thirds, how their energy use at home, if they have power, or how their energy use in any other way affects the climate and the whole energy sector as a whole. And we also talk to them about the different sources of energy, and most we concentrate more on the fossil fuels, and especially right now when the East African crude oil pipeline is being constructed starting from our country. We explain to them what the oil pipeline is going to do to the vegetation, to the biodiversity, the consequences that the East African crude oil pipeline is going to have on the different livelihoods. So that we explain that through the different choices of energy that we select, they all have consequences. That's the best way that we engage with them about energy literacy.
That's great, thank you. So for kind of looking at it long term, is that like does that continue to be taught like over the years in the schools? Is there anything? So I'm assuming there's nothing in the curriculum already about kind of renewable energy and stuff. So do you leave them with sort of resources to kind of pass it on as new people enter the school?
We what we do, we always circle back to the schools that we have worked on. So if we work on a school in January, and then we continue to work with different schools over the year, in the middle of the year or towards the end of the year, we start to circle back to these schools. And if there are any global climate campaigns that are taking place, we can select a particular school that we worked with previously and come back and talk with them more. Because right now we don't have climate education within the a national curriculum. So it is us that have to teach them through engagement. Right now we are not able to leave them with any sort of resources because we these students they don't have, for example, IT equipment. There is no way they're going to access the internet from their homes. Other schools don't have computers. So we only go back and engage with them physically as a way of education and creating more awareness, even to the new students or to the new teachers that may not have been available when the construction or when the project was taking place in their school, but found it and have no idea why it was done. So that's how we promote engagement with the students and the teachers.
That's great, thank you. So I have another question from Henry Lucen Gore, which is, why is the government focused on supporting coal energy?
That is a very interesting question. So, if my history serves me right, the oil was discovered in the Albertine region in 2005. And over time, we were told of the economic prospects that were going to take place when the East African crude oil pipeline was constructed. And of course, we know that there are jobs, that people get jobs, and their livelihoods will be fixed because of the pipeline. But a recent report was released, and it stated that the value of oil and any coal power plants by 2035, their value will be greatly reduced because right now we are pushing for a transition. We are pushing for a shift from fossil fuels and coal power plants to renewable energy. So when you look at it in an economic way or pathway, the investment in coal does not really work, because I understand that the government borrowed money to set up the East African crude oil pipeline. But by 2035, its value would greatly be reduced. So, and it will be stuck with a debt that it has to pay.
Okay.
There is more sensitization that is needed for that.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. I'm just going to have a look at our next question. It's also from Henry, which is, have the communities you work with noticed at all changes in the climate?
Yeah, very much. Especially the communities that are relying on agriculture. There are communities that are depending on agriculture as a source of income and also as a source of livelihood and food, subsistence farming. And they also know that the rains reduced. For example, in Uganda, it's November, and November is known to be a rainy season. But in the first 2 weeks of November, it was really hot. And uh, it is such seasonal changes that are affecting their livelihoods. They don't know when to plant, because they used to plant basing on the rainfall patterns. But when they're expecting the rains to come, nothing. Okay. When they're expecting the rains to come, they don't come. And that means that they are going to have reduced outcomes or reduced amount of food produced from their gardens. And that leaves them lacking enough food, and they have to look for other ways that they can get food. And most of them think it's just a natural occurrence, but when we engage with them and we talk to them that it's actually the climate that is changing, then they'll start connecting the dots. They'll start seeing the heavy floods that happen. They start seeing the prolonged droughts that happen. And others also notice that changes when you talk to them about the rising water levels. They notice that actually in other parts of the country as well, the water levels were rising and they caused flooding along shore communities. So every time we engage with them, they are awakened and enlightened that the events that are happening, or because of the reduced rainfall, it doesn't just happen. There is science to explain it, and that is climate change.
Thank you so much. So we've got one last question now in the last few minutes. This is from Nicolette Rota. And this is, do the schools own the solar panels that are installed in their communities? And she's asking because ownership brings more control over the local community's energy destiny and wider well-being.
Yes, so when we install these solar panels, we give them full control and full management over them and any other project that we have done with them, because we want to make them understand that they have power over it. And also we train them to carry out maintenance by themselves without calling us, unless it's a serious issue. Then that's when we come in and help out with the maintenance. But apart from that, we leave them with the full control. They manage it, they manage their energy use, they know when to switch them on. We advise them on which appliances they can use along with the solar panels, so that they don't over overpower the solar panels. So they have full control.
That's great. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for all of your questions, everyone. And a massive thank you to you, Davis, for coming and speaking with us today. Yeah, thank you so much. If you want to find more from Davis, you can look on his Twitter. His Twitter handle is DavisReuben3, and there's lots of updates and resources on there. Thank you so much.